But no matter what, buying these types of properties is not for the faint of heart. It's not really for the beginner, and it's not something that you just jump into without really doing your research. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Real James Rondon podcast. Today we're going to be talking about foreclosures and buying a foreclosure and some of the things that you need to be looking out for if you're going to try to maybe look to buy a foreclosure. Some of the things you have to know in advance, some of the risks that are involved, and the ways that you have to go about buying these kind of properties. So I've bought several foreclosed properties. I've bought them in lots of different ways. There's lots of different ways to buy a foreclosed property. There are different kinds of foreclosed properties. When we're talking about foreclosure, what we're talking about typically is the typical foreclosure is someone has fallen behind on their mortgage payments and they've gone into default, and the bank ends up taking the property back through the legal means of foreclosure. It's a terrible situation. A lot of people, especially during the housing crisis back in 2008, which really, a lot of that started really before 2008. It really started in the end of 2005 into 2006. But there were a lot of people back then that were affected by it. People that normally wouldn't have fallen behind on payments because of the conditions in the market, because of what was happening in the economy, what was happening specifically with banks and with mortgages. There were a lot of people that lost their homes, and it's a sad situation. If there's a shiny silver lining when it comes to foreclosures for an investor, is that an investor a lot of times can come in and take, they can acquire one of these properties and take it from maybe a distressed situation, because a lot of these properties end up being in a distressed condition. They can take them and they can make them look a lot better. They can improve the properties. They can inject new life into them. They can make them, really shine. And they can then also improve the neighborhood and help the homeowners in the neighborhood, help all those values in the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're looking at foreclosed properties, though, a lot of times, and we had this during the housing crisis as a real estate broker, I had people all the time calling, hey, I want to go see that house. It's only X amount of dollars. Let's say it was a $50,000 foreclosure. Oh, I know, I could get a loan on that, no problem. The payment would be X amount of dollars, and it would be nothing for me to be able to afford that. The problem, people would punch in those mortgage calculations online, and they would feel like, hey, I can really do this. But they weren't really understanding that foreclosed properties are very hard to finance through a bank. Banks don't like distressed properties. They don't like properties that are in a distressed condition. They don't want to get them back. They don't want to have to deal with the same thing the other bank had to deal with. So financing can become an issue, and I'll get to that in just a second. But let's first talk about a few different kinds of foreclosed properties. You have your bank foreclosure, which we were just talking about, or your mortgage foreclosure. You also have your REO sale, and those are often bank foreclosures or other type of foreclosed properties. Sometimes they are properties that maybe a company has acquired. It could be some type of company associated with a bank. It could be some kind of lending institution or offshoot of a lending institution. But we call them REOs because it's real estate owned. And those properties are also, they would come under kind of the umbrella of a foreclosure. You also have sheriff sales or sheriff auctions. These are properties that have gone through foreclosure, but they are in their very initial foreclosed state. What I mean by that is once the actual foreclosure occurs, the municipality, then the county usually takes jurisdiction in the sense that they will utilize an auction scenario to sell off the rights to the property or to sell off the mortgage and also the rights to the home. When they do this, there's a lot of things that people need to look out for, and I'll get to that in just a second. But you also have your tax foreclosures, and these are properties that are taken back not because of a default in a mortgage, but because of defaults in property taxes. Someone didn't pay their property taxes. Typically, a county will wait until 3 years of default, and then they'll go ahead and take back a property and then resell it through public auction. When we're looking at these types of homes, these types of properties, it's not necessarily just a home. It could be a multifamily, commercial, could be land, could be a condominium. But you have to have cash or cash equivalent to be able to buy them. Banks are normally not going to lend money on these. If they do, it's not going to be the kind of loan that you'd be punching in on your mortgage calculator typically. And you have to be able to have the money, and you have to be able to utilize it quickly. In a sheriff sale situation, for example, you have, for example, in Kenosha County, you go to the sale, they announce the opening bid, you have to have 10% in cash or a cashier's check at the auction, and that 10% goes as a down payment. And once the sale is confirmed by the courts, if you win the bid, if you're the winning bidder, then you have to come up with the rest of it all at once. Usually confirmation is within a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks maybe. Sometimes it's a little longer, but you have to have the money. So some people are able to put a down payment on it, go and get some type of loan, maybe through private, some kind of private money source, maybe hard money or some type of hard money loan. We'll do an episode on hard money and hard money lending another time. But these types of, loan options do exist. People will maybe do a HELOC. They'll take money out of their existing home or their existing real estate and then borrow that money and put it towards purchasing the foreclosed property. When you're looking at these, though, you can't have contingencies. A lot of people, they'll go into a situation, they try to buy a house, they write up an offer, seller and the buyer go back and forth, they come to terms, you put earnest money down, you have your home inspection, you have your appraisal, you've walked through the property, you've looked at everything, and then at the end of the day, you go to the closing table, and maybe you've gone through a lender, and the lender ends up giving you the money at the closing table to purchase the home. It doesn't work like that in foreclosed sales. There are many of them where you can't even get inside of them to see the inside of the home. You have to buy them sight unseen. That's the case when it comes to the sheriff sales or sheriff auctions. Also, most of the time with the tax sales, it's the same way. Now, some counties will give you pictures of the inside of the home for a tax sale. They'll maybe allow people to walk through them up to a certain point of time, but often these properties are going to be unable to be seen, especially the sheriff's sale. The regular foreclosures that are going through a bank and are just on the resale market, maybe through a realtor, or they're being offered by the company itself. Sometimes you can get into, most of the time you can get into those if they're listed with a realtor. But you usually can't ask for inspections. You usually can't give yourself an inspection window. If it's an online auction situation or an online sale, or if it is maybe a foreclosure that's offered or an REO that's offered through a realtor, sometimes you can do that, but you got a lot of competition, and other buyers are going to come in often with cash. They'll come in as is. They'll come in no contingency. So even in the event where there's a scenario where you could possibly ask for some contingencies and be able to see the property, you're limited because of the competition. Also, let's talk just real quick about risks. Now, I did mention that there are some of these where you can't see the inside of them. And that's difficult for some buyers. They'll just say, no way, I would never buy a home if I can't see the inside. How would I ever be able to tell whether it's something that's a complete disaster or not? I'm going to do another episode probably in the next week, maybe in the next couple of episodes. We'll talk about how to buy a house sight unseen, what to look for. Okay, and I'll give you some tips and just some suggestions on, if you ever come into that situation, how to navigate it. But when you're doing sheriff sales, you're buying that property and you're inheriting any back taxes. You're inheriting any liens or judgments against the property. You better make sure that the mortgage that's foreclosing is the first mortgage, or that it's another mortgage that was first has been subordinated, or that the mortgage itself, or whatever is the foreclosing mechanism, that you're going to have rights to the actual property. A lot of people made that mistake. They go to a sheriff's sale, they basically buy a second mortgage, and they don't get rights to the property. They pay off somebody's second mortgage. They end up paying off their trip to Acapulco and maybe their boat and their new kitchen cabinets or something, because somebody took out a second loan, didn't pay for it. You go down, you pay for it, and then all of a sudden you find out there's a first mortgage that has they have the first rights, and they have the rights to the property. So you got to be careful. You got to know what you're getting into. A really good way to do that is by working with a local title company, trying to make sure that if this is something on your radar, that you have a title company, you hire a title company to look into it for you to make sure that you're buying this right. With tax sales, I bought some tax sale properties, Kenosha and Racine. Kenosha is kind of a strange cookie. There's an issue when you buy a property from the tax sale in Kenosha because of the way they publish when they're doing the actual foreclosure. They have to publish that, and they have to notify any creditors and the person that owns the property. And there's a little bit of a conflict between the county and the state, and because of that, title companies don't like to actually pass along or give insurance to properties acquired through tax foreclosure in Kenosha. The rule of thumb around here really is that you've got to own it if you buy it, you gotta just wait 2 years before you can resell it, or maybe even refinance it. So something to check into if you're interested in doing this in Kenosha County. They have different ways of approaching this in Kenosha County than they do in Racine County. For example, in Kenosha County, their tax sales, they have a silent auction, a silent bid. You submit a bid, and then if that bid is accepted, then you have to come up with the money like pretty quick to pay off the balance. In Racine County, you have to have 20%, a check for 20% up front before you make, like, with your bid. And that kind of limits you as to how many bids you're making. If there's 10 properties up for sale, if you want to bid on all 10, you're going to have to come up with 20% for all 10, and they'll hold it. It's, you know, they go through an approval process for the bid, for the winning bid, and you can have your money tied up for a month or more. So something to look into and consider before you get into these types of purchases and these types of scenarios and these types of foreclosures. But anyways, I could go a lot deeper into this. I will say that buying distressed homes, buying foreclosed properties, buying properties through sheriff sale, and sheriff sale is like an open auction. There, you know, everybody's calling out the bids. You know what the bids are. You know, with the tax sales, you don't know what they are. It's a blind bid. You submit a sealed bid. It's, you know, when you're buying through a realtor, obviously, you know, the bid isn't known. You know, you submit it to the seller, and you a lot of times come in with your highest and best. Sometimes the online auctions, you'll be able to see what the top bid is, and you can bid above it. But no matter what, buying these types of properties is not for the faint of heart. It's not really for the beginner, and it's not something that you just jump into without really doing your research. So I've been doing this a long time. I've bought a lot of properties through foreclosure that have been foreclosed. We've, you know, beautified them, you know, relisted them, and changed the marketplace and the dynamics of the neighborhoods by making these properties look a lot better. We've also acquired some of these types of properties and used them, you know, to house tenants as well as rental properties. So, you know, the investor can come in and they can really, really help when it comes to these types of homes. But it better be an investor that knows what they're doing, or that investor could end up right back here with a foreclosure or, you know, in a bad situation. So anyways, we'll talk more about the particulars again in another episode, but wanted to just mention those things to you today. I hope it helped. Probably brought up a lot more questions, which might be good, but thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.